Welcome back to part four of what I call the art of film and what makes Sammy run. I'm gonna try to finish this out in probably three more parts. But anyway, as I was saying from the last part, I believe it was part three. The Hollywood Moguls who came out uh, to California, they had a very impressive knowledge about the marketing of film. And they, having owned, as I said before, theaters, they knew exactly what the audiences wanted to see. But out of that configuration of various studios, because you see, the studio system, as it was in the early 30s, but starting in the late teens and 20s of the last century, they had many of them merged together. Many of these moguls merged together, like Louis B. Mayer and Samuel Goldwyn. Others built up a studio department. And then you had places like Universal and Paramount, which they didn't have great personalities that ran those studios, but they certainly had a brand. And they had a lot of investment money from the East behind them. But just to go over the studio system, of course, you had Paramount. Let's see if this will work. Then you had Universal. And it was said at that time that if you got fired from Universal, you were shoo-in to become a star. Then you had, of course, the ones that were really associated with the product of celebrity in Hollywood, and that was MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, and at the head of this was Louis B. Mayer, and then you had also Samuel Goldwyn. And then, of course, you had, I'll put it over here, Warner Brothers. And then you had, let's see, Warner Brothers. Oh, I'm forgetting Columbia. And Harry Cohn was the head of this studio. Just to go back to Warner Brothers, Jack Warner, there were three Warner Brothers, but Jack Warner was the mogul that ran this studio. Jack Warner. But to get into this configuration right here of MGM, Warner Brothers, Columbia, see, these were the traditional moguls right here. Paramount and Universal didn't have grand personalities running a studio, but they, as I said before, had a brand. But in this era of moguls who knew all about the business, at least from the consumer side, and certainly in the visceral and the tangible wherewithal to know the logistics between the moviegoer and the actual product of the pictures that people wanted to see. These moguls, they were not at all sympathetic in the way that we would have any kind of nostalgia about them now. They were very insensitive men. They could be very insensitive to the plight of the actors or even to the overall sense of giving an actor or an actress the right kind of vehicle to get their start. But they did give people chances, of course. And they understood that a lot of the actors who were coming from the stage, needed to have a gradual transition to doing what was on the screen. And as it was said in the art of film, that is the book, The Art of Film, that was very difficult. So what they devised to do, and this is how they divided the whole movie making arrangement and the production into two distinct tiers of qualities of movies. And they gave the actors, the newly signed actors, what was called a B picture. Just so that they could develop their style of interaction with the camera, and then they could figure out how the lighting would be and the makeup should be and the kinds of roles that best suited them. Not the ones that they necessarily wanted to play, but the kinds of roles that the Moguls saw them in and would best financially buttress the studio and everything else like that. So they thought nothing in terms of the quality of acting. I think it was Betty Davis who said that, the way they saw acting, if you got paid more for being an actress or an actor, that was the rubrics to which they used in terms of who was an A-list actor and who was a B-list actor. What you got paid determined that. But nevertheless, what you had in terms of the way in which the arrangement of the pictures were portrayed had to do with having the actors go through the B picture first, just to get the techniques down. Then you would graduate, if you got past that, in what your charisma, as far as the connection to the camera, was centered around in terms of your celebrity. Then you would graduate to A pictures. These were the pictures that really brought in the revenues, the RORs, in terms of the studio financial system. And once the actors and the actresses became brands and then became, as it were, typecast in certain types of roles. Clark Gable was the man's man. Every man wanted to be him, and every woman wanted to take him as their lover. And this was how the development of that kind of celebrity was really hashed out. Of course, Clark Gable, John Wayne, very interestingly, flopped. He did, when he came out there as something of a rival to Gary Cooper, he really did not take well. The Moguls threw him, I think Jack Warner threw him into a lot of roles, and then he just couldn't find his footing, and he had to rebuild his celebrity in B pictures until finally they gave him another shot with a major picture. But you had other people come in what was his name? I'm trying to think of some of the Spencer Tracy, and very interestingly, you had let's see, James Cagney. I'm trying to think of the actor who was in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'll think of it as I go along, but he was one of the few actors to be independent and to have his own independent contract. But nevertheless, what you had was a studio system that relied very heavily upon the way in which the Moguls saw you. Not so much how you saw yourself, but what the Moguls saw you and the roles that you would play, and how you would connect with the screen, connect with the audience, connect with the moviegoer. And that is where they based all of their attention as far as you were concerned. But it was Helen Hayes who said that, Louis B. Mayer was the devil incarnate, because he would not listen to what the actor wanted. He told you what kind of movies you were going to be in, and that was all there was to it. And that's why Louise Rayner, who was the first actress to win an Oscar back-to-back, left the Hollywood scene and left the studio, because she could not deal with that kind of not only micromanagement, but also control. One of the things that made a lot of people walk away from that part of the movie business was, they just did not have control over where their careers were going. And that's was the price you paid when you signed on the dotted line of that contract. And now I'm going to stop it right here. We're going to get to What Makes Sammy Run, and how that book really mirrored the transition to when Wall Street would take over.